everyone. Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Wheel and Chill Show. This is an incredibly special episode, if that's what you want to call it, of our show. We are unbelievably thrilled to have the guests that we have tonight, Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, the audiobook duo extraordinaire. You may recognize their voices on the stream from the likes of the Wheel of Time series, the Stormlight Archive, well, lots of Brandon Sanderson books. We know how many books he puts out on the regular. Just recently, I think last week maybe, or the week before, Dawn Shard became available, and I have already finished it, and it was excellent. I actually I was saving up to read it until the audiobook came out, so I just inhaled it, and it was so good. So yes, welcome to everyone in the chat. Welcome to Michael and Kate. As usual, we're going to give incredibly brief introductions. I already kind of introduced Michael and Kate, but I want to toss it over to them to say whatever they want to say, pitch whatever they want to pitch, and just get this stream kicked off. So Michael and Kate, go ahead.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
We're super happy to be here talking about mental health in the Wheel of Time and our favorite charity, which is Books to Prisoners. This is a nationwide program based in Seattle, and they serve prisons all over the country, and they get books to incarcerated people. And that's actually one of the reasons why we picked this topic, is because
Among other things, we've received a number of notifications from people who actually discovered the Wheel of Time and or Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive while they were incarcerated or just after. And it had a profound effect on them. And that's partly why. Also, a while ago, I was the voice of God at an event for the Library of Congress, and it was a literacy event, and the keynote speaker basically said, the way to break poverty in any country is to increase literacy. And that's kind of why we are focused on creating and furthering literacy in the country.
That's incredible. In case you were interested in supporting Books to Prisoners, a link to the page on Michael and Kate's website about the charity is in the description of the video on YouTube. And this is something interesting that you might like, but if you donate, I believe it's $50, is that right? You can submit a request, and Michael and Kate will do a minute or 30-second recording for you. Just, around there. And so if you have anything you've been wanting them to say specifically, now's your chance. You just got to donate to an incredible cause, and it could be yours. So think about that for sure. Winespring, why don't you introduce yourself too, for anyone who might not be familiar with you, and then we'll do Tavern, and we can get started with the topic at hand, which is mental health, the Wheel of Time, and audiobooks.
Okay, hi, I'm Winespring Cafe from winespringcafe.com, the Wheel of Time food blog, where you can find things like honey cakes and trollic balls and Nynaeve's garlic gnocchi soup. You should check it out and try the recipes. They're super yummy.
Super yummy.
They are super yummy. Okay, check winespringcafe.com. Don't miss it. Tavern, will you introduce yourself briefly?
Hola, yo me llamo Tavern. Everybody's Tavern. I do some TikToks. I do merch, so you can find me on redbubble.com with all of my Wheel of Time merch that I have on there. Just look for Tavern. I'm also on Twitter, and I like dogs.
Hey, that's a great thing to like. I'm Kritter XD. I'm all over the place. I love the Wheel of Time. I love sci-fi fantasy. You might have noticed me for the first time on TikTok, because I do a lot of TikTok content, and I'm just happy to be in the Wheel of Time fandom because we are just the best. And I think Michael and Kate learned that recently because their first ever in-person con was WattCon. Am I right? Did you guys absolutely have a blast?
It was a blast. It was an absolute blast. Yeah.
You
Very
guys,
happy to
you guys became instant legends. Like even if you weren't yet, you are. People keep talking about you guys to this day and how fun you were, and so yeah, we really appreciate you coming out to WatCon too. So people in the chat are saying hi. Anna says Michael and Kate are amazing. Dana Lou, who has just a bunch of books. Edward Bauer, I literally finished the last book today. It was a time crunch, and I finished the audiobook with 2 hours before it had to be returned to the library. Congratulations. And I posted today on TikTok and Instagram and all over the place that you guys were coming on, and I had so many people tell me that, like me, you two read them to sleep almost every night and have for years. Do you hear that a lot?
We do.
We do.
And I have to say, we take it as a huge compliment that we are part of people's mental health toolkits, because there seems to be something about our voices that makes them feel safe and relaxed and allows them to drop off. But I also want to add, we got some great content coming up for that, because I am actually recording the glossary for the origins of the Wheel of Time. And if that doesn't say nothing.
I'm sure it's thrilling. What are you talking about?
It's going to be perfect.
We're getting our own Silmarillion?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting. Currently working on it, like not obviously as we speak, but like it's your ongoing project.
It was part of my mentally stressful day today.
I see. So have you heard anything else about how people maybe use audiobooks sort of as a part, you said they're a mental health toolkit. I know I personally, like, you guys read me to sleep, which is incredible. I also listen to you while I work out, and it makes working out that much easier. Is there anything else you think people can use audiobooks for, like, to, specifically benefit them, either mental health wise or in another way?
I mean, I think for a lot of people, especially if they're re-listening, they're like, they have a story they're very familiar with. If they're feeling disconnected, confused, scattered, can't focus, to listen to something that is familiar, that has rhythm, that their body responds to it, and it can kind of center you and focus you and ground you. What was it that you read the other day about the physics of the sound of the human voice?
There's it's sound in general. There was an experiment done by I believe it was a Louisiana scientist, and she would flash images on a screen, and then every now and again there would be one inverted. And at the same time she did that, she put down a soundtrack that was rhythmic. Mm-hmm. And when the inverted image happened on the downbeat, so to speak, they were mapping the parts of the brain that responded, and you could identify it much faster than if it just happened on any other beat other than the downbeat. I talked about how, and if you're a poet, you know this kind of intrinsically, in the sense that when the important word happens on the stressed syllable, it's communicated that much more effectively and thoroughly. So, for instance, an iambic pentameter, ta-da, 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 ta-da. If you read it closely, you'll find that Shakespeare, for instance, is 9 times out of 10 putting the important word or syllable on the stressed syllable. That's one, that sound synchronizes our breathing and our heartbeats when we're in a group. That's how everybody's tapping their toe when they're listening to something in a bar or whatever, or if you're, when you're at a musical or whatever, there's this synergy that happens between people. Also, then there's a whole music therapy thing, which talks about certain tones can be very, very comforting. That's its own thing. I haven't followed up on that, because
that's fascinating.
Part of my experiment in this whole thing is one of the books that I narrated for the Library of Congress, Talking Books program, was Cormac McCarthy's The Road. And I was reading it to myself, and it had one effect. When I read it out loud, it completely changed. Because all of a sudden, to hear that voice, to hear it in rhythm, to hear it had a totally different impact on me personally. And that's part of I think, the whole nature of writing has been in the past that story was told, and so for instance, back in the late 19th, early 20th century, when they were serializing things like Charles Dickens, Chapter 3 is coming out next week. Someone would buy that newspaper, but that was the only person who could afford to buy the newspaper. So he'd run to the corner, and all around him would gather people who wanted to hear the next chapter of the story, much like Dawn Chart just released.
Yep.
And they would give the newspaper, if it wasn't the person who bought it, to the best storyteller. And that person would then read the story to 20, 30, however many people were gathered around them. And that's how the popularity of those stories was increased, because it was being communicated to this vast population. With the advent of print, a lot of books now are written for the eye. In other words, they're not being spoken. The author doesn't necessarily think of it as being read out loud. That's not Robert Jordan. I'm sure that he was aware that that's part of why he wanted to have two voices in terms of the narration. So to have the story being told out loud was very important to him, and has a different effect than just taking in the information, taking in the story visually.
And especially because I think, number one, in terms of mental health, which we're going to try to keep focused on,
Yeah.
The difference between when you read a book, you are alone. It's just you and the book and the whole world of the book, but you're alone. When you're listening to another human being's voice, you're in company with them. And given the nature of this fandom, you know that there are other people at any given time listening. So I think maybe one of the effects is also to feel like you are not alone, you are actually in communion with other human beings through this story.
That's awesome. I totally agree. It's a comforting thing, like there's a different feeling absolutely to sitting down with a book by yourself and turning on an audiobook, in my opinion. I know we're going to talk about the Wheel of Time and mental health. Winespring or Tavern, do you have anything that's like not Wheel of Time specific that you want to ask them about this topic before we dive into the Wheel of Time stuff?
Yeah. Have you heard of the Schumann's resonance? It's a real low tone that you can listen to, and it prepares you for bedtime if you listen to it. It really kind of like what you were talking about reminded me of it. I haven't used it in a long time, but I used to use it to prepare for bed because it'll really knock you out. And I think it's supposed to be the tone that the earth is giving off or something like that. To check it out, Schumann's resonance.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yes, it's just like that, and you can feel it grounding you, and you just get all relaxed.
Yeah, that's great. What's the name again?
Schumann's resonance.
Schumann's resonance.
Nice.
Check it out.
Okay.
Will.
I definitely will.
Are we ready to dive into Wheel of Time stuff now? Okay. Okay, so I guess you met Robert Jordan, right? Or spoke with him, or nothing
We
like
had one phone conversation with him very early when we were working on book one.
Okay.
Because we quickly ran out of defined pronunciations, and this was in the age of snail mail and
Very expensive long distance.
very
phone calls.
expensive long distance.
Oh, no.
And literally, I don't think we had a computer at that point.
Wow.
Other than,
Wow.
yeah, phones were still attached to the wall.
The
Some-
wall?
You can only talk at peak hours, or else the rate would go through the roof. Yeah.
And so we were trying to figure out a way, how can we accomplish this, because they sent us the first 5 or 6 books in a box
Wow.
and said, "Get them to us as soon as we can." And we were like, well, how do we want to handle the names? And we offered, we can kind of see what you're doing phonetically in the glossary. We'll just kind of keep honoring those rules that we see, unless you specify it in succeeding glossaries. But we had the first, I think, 5 books, and the glossary is pretty much the same. I think it expanded a little bit in books 2 and 3. And he basically agreed
Nice.
that, and we never had a letter from him or any complaint of like, go, no, you really need to pronounce that this way. And
Well, that's
that
awesome.
was our only interaction with him personally. It was over the phone.
Right. So clearly, though, you were eventually, I assume, became intimately familiar with the books themselves, right? After reading them and rereading them and reading them out loud and all of that stuff. So one question, do you think Jordan deliberately addressed mental health issues in The Wheel of Time?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that will come out with the origins of the Wheel of Time is just his youth and his war experience.
Okay.
And I think, and how that influenced him both as a human being and as a writer. And the brilliant fact that he took, the male half of the source and corrupted it, to me is from the get-go, he's addressing toxic masculinity in a bleak way, with a construct to a certain degree. And he's dealing with all kinds of issues, whether it's authority issues, whether it's when you look at how Rand reacts to what he's being at times forced to do, and how he can live with himself, the whole loose Theron living in his head from the get-go, and Luz Theron's battle with what he ultimately did, a means ends kind of struggle that goes on in terms of and how he dealt with that, asked those questions. Then there's all of the issues of the confinement and sense deprivation that's going on, how that changes people. There's any number of issues that he does it as a writer does, which is he tells a story about it. It's part of the story, and so the healing or the exploration of the themes happen in the events of the story.
And I think one of the things that he does so brilliantly, and it's fascinating because we're going to be recording the origins of the Wheel of Time by Michael Livingston, and Michael's doing the body of the book. I'm doing the glossary, which I think is actually more pages than you have. I worked for many hours today, and I just got into the B's.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh,
It's extensive, is what you're saying.
One of the things that's so fascinating about reading this glossary is that it addresses what was in Jordan's head when he created the structure of all these things. And there are so many instances. So you go to all the mythologies, right? Well, right there, most mythologies address the human condition in symbolic or metaphoric form, right? And then in Jordan's case, because he's pulling from ancient, modern, global, local, all of it, the fact that the hierarchy of the institution of the Aes Sedai closely mirrors the Catholic Church. So you've got a lot of when you look at the sort of the harm or the stress that the Catholic Church hierarchy can put on the people inside it, that is mirrored in the experience of the Aes Sedai.
Wow.
So you're reading fantasy, and it's so grounded. It's so completely grounded in reality.
Yeah.
And there was one of the other institutions that he goes into, gone out of my head.
You'll come back.
It will. But probably when you're right in the middle of saying something.
Mhm.
But, oh, I remember.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you look, oh, I know what it was.
Oh, let's go. Okay.
So the whole Shongshan,
Mm-hmm.
the whole issue of slavery.
Oh yeah, that's a whole
Yes.
different. Yeah.
Charleston is his hometown. Old slave markets are a couple blocks from his house.
Right.
Wow.
So when you're reading, again, you're reading about these sort of alien, fantastic figures, but you are reading about the issues and the effect of the institution of slavery that it has on the people who suffer under it
Mm-hmm.
And who also inflict it,
and who inflict it.
because that's part of his youth and heritage in that regard. With that, what Michael Livingston makes very evident, even though you can sense it, is Gordon was such a voracious reader himself,
Mm-hmm.
and he was very particular about the names that he chose, partly because he is trying to reference certain things, and even if I liken it to like tasting a glass of wine, and it's like, oh, there's some black currant, there's some pepper,
Mm-hmm.
there's some mushroom, there's some grasshopper. It's like he's trying to put all of those, trying to put all of the flavors of that in there.
Right.
And so there are certain things that are definitely, you see, okay, Aiel, for instance, he's modeling that both on Arabic culture, but also on Native American culture. And he's weaving those symbols and those things into his telling, and also the names that he's choosing for characters. And he wants those resonances to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, Luz Theron's name, there's a whole journey of how he comes onto that name. It starts out as one thing, and then it's another, and he's got notes. He had copious notes, and Michael Livingston has gone through and just kind of documented how various characters ended up with it. Rand, how he ended up with his name to begin with, and just taking you through all of the thinking that went into each of the names, and then also the character lines, the arc of the characters that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. Speaking, you mentioned Rand a few times in there, and the thing about Rand to me is not only I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. Let me see. Not only is Rand dealing with his own mental health issues, right? He's got, like you said, he's got Luz Theron in there, so he's dealing with his and Luz Theron's, while Luz Theron is dealing with his own. So it's like mental health to the nth degree in one person, which brings a whole new light on Rand. Because on top of all the other physical issues he's having to deal with, he's got this multiplier in his head that is just amplifying everything. As you mentioned, the box, right? He's in there with himself, with Luz Theron, and they're fighting back and forth. It's an epic argument between him and the person that he used to be. And yeah, it's pretty impressive. The writing on that is pretty impressive.
I heard it somewhere said that Robert Jordan served in Vietnam, and
That's
a lot of two tours. What you saying? Okay. And that a lot of what he experienced in his own mental health journey kind of comes through with Rand and Rand's journey.
Makes sense.
Some of it, some of it is autobiographical, although not necessarily. There are certain things that he relates to. It's that section of the origins of Wheel of Time is just fascinating to look at because his wartime experience was quite amazing. And then and then he left and wanted to become a physicist and was actually a physicist for the government. And
nice.
then
I didn't know that.
walked away from it because he wanted to write.
We're so glad he did.
A fascinating man, honestly.
I think what's interesting is if you look at the characters who are experiencing mental distress, and then you look at the tools they use
Yes.
to survive it. And just
Yes.
take Rand as an example and just sort of go through his journey and see like what helped him, what saved him, what propelled him to be able to tackle the next obstacle.
And I would say one of those things would be like the flame in the void or meditation. He learned to center and ground mentally so that he could focus. Which is good for all of us in our mental health journeys.
Noman Garden in the chat said, Rand was dealing with his own mental issues, quoting me, and he goes, was he though? He completely was. Yeah, like you said, the void and the flame was his main tool that he was taught by Tam. So when he first started hearing Lews Therin, that was his tool. Later on, he learned to communicate with Lews Therin, right? Were there a bunch of other issues that he was kind of ignoring? Yes. But he was doing the best he could. Like when the female, the women around him started dying and he started his list, that was another way for him to cope. Might not have been the best way to cope, but it was a way to cope. But yeah, so there's a lot going on there. It's cool.
I guess I was going to ask, and you kind of touched on this already, but do you think the Wheel of Time has things to teach the people who are struggling with mental health issues? And if you have any, examples, obviously we've talked a lot about Rand, but for example, for me, I have dealt with kind of the expectation that women are faced of being nice and being accommodating, that I'm faced with that expectation every single day. So when I come across as more aggressive maybe than people might want, or not as accommodating, it's like I have to deal with people not being satisfied with that because I'm not fulfilling the role that I'm expected to fulfill as a woman. And I feel like, for example, Egwene, for me, people in the fandom call her a bitch. People in the fandom say she's too ambitious. There's so many things they say about Egwene, and Egwene just overcomes it, doesn't matter. She does what she needs to do. People think that she should just roll over for Rand and all of his plans, and she doesn't anyways because, she's her own person. And that, for me, has been incredibly inspirational. She teaches us all that we should be who we want to be and who we are, even if it doesn't fulfill some kind of, role that society wants us to fulfill. So that's just my personal example. But do you think that is true? Is there anything else that we can learn essentially from any of the characters from the Wheel of Time for mental health issues, or, how to be ourselves just a little more?
I think from all of them, one of the great things about the age variation is that there are these older mentors, and there are you got a young person who's dealing with something, and then there'll be 5 older people, and they chose paths A, B, C, D, and E, ranging from highly successful to absolutely disastrous. And the young person could be well, which one am I going to be? Oh, I'm going to be the utter disaster. I'm going to do that one.
With regard to that, it's the mentor relationships that happen in the Wheel of Time are fascinating. Whether it's Perrin and Elias, the people who take younger people other people under their wing and then lead them on and give them the benefit. I think that mentoring aspect is a huge part of the mental health reach out, so to speak, and that you do need to reach out to other people around you, not necessarily just your friends, in terms of how do you overcome certain things, because I think that's one of the interesting things for Rand. Rand doesn't accomplish a whole lot on his own. He's really, I mean, so much as he is helped by any number of people. Some of them are his peers, some of them are vastly older, have a whole different, Moraine just invested in him, land to a certain degree, investing in him, and the different types of ways through it. Some of it is intellectual, but some of it is physical. Mm-hmm. Some of it is, okay, I have to train. There's that aspect to the type of living you do, and the kind of health that you try to achieve. I also feel like every philosophy in time runs up against difficulty. Mm-hmm. Nothing is a cure-all.
Everything's tested.
Yeah, because there's, whether it's absolute power, well, then you have got absolute corruption. What's to stop that? Who's going to keep it in check? How do you build those checks in? And how do you let in the Aes Sedai world? How do you let the Amarlin see? What is the check on her power? Mm-hmm. And that's what he's constantly exploring in the book.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's. We're about halfway through the stream, so I want to take a little break to send you guys some well wishes from the chat. Let's see. Edward Bauran looks like he agrees with the sentiment that the mentorship issue, or the reaching out to mentors in the Wheel of Time, feels like a good lesson, because he thinks some of Rand's issues were due to the fact that he kept trying to do it all alone. So that's Robert Jordan kind of showing us, like, it's always better with friends. It's always better if you seek out a mentor. So that's such a good point. Light Blinded Fool says, Michael and Kate's voices are a large part of most of my days. So grateful. Breakpoint says, the emotion Michael had when Lews Theron says, Semiraj, before he loses his hand still gives me chills. We've got a lot of love, just so you know, coming to you in the chat, and everyone's really excited that you're here. So just know that you have some major fans. Okay, Winespring, I know we all prepared questions for you because we're really excited to hear. Winespring, why don't you send one their way?
Okay, hypothetically, saying that you have any control over this at all, if you could require students at a certain age range to start reading The Wheel of Time, what age would it be?
8. Why did I say 8?
8? Okay, that's so much younger than I would have said.
No, age of reason, like, depending, right? Like, some of them just can't take in such a big story, but I don't think, 8.
8, okay.
Maybe more conservative?
No, I would say 10, just because I think.
Okay, 8 if they're girls. 10.
Yeah, 10.
Yes.
Part of it.
I see what we did there. Yes.
What's fascinating to me about the journey that the Wheel of Time takes is, you think it's an adventure story, and then you begin to understand there's adventure in it, and that's kind of the hook that pulls you through. But it's the rest of it, and so in a way, books 1, 2, and 3 are they're hugely adventurous, as they all have that aspect to them. But then once you start to really kind of explore what the real journey is, in terms of uniting, purifying the male half, and then finding a way to unite people, that's a much more complex journey than slaying a dragon or killing the orcs or Trollocs or or Myrddraal. That's exciting. but he takes you on a. That's why I think starting at 10, because it'll take you a while. Of course,
Yes.
when you're 10, you can just like, okay, disappear for 3 weeks. Where is, that was me reading when I was growing up. My mom would knock on the door. We're eating supper. We finished supper. Time to turn out the lights. And you're just turning the pages.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of age, it's interesting because we started recording the books over 20 years ago. So we were 20 years younger, and for our first encounter with the books. And what's fascinating is as you re-meet these characters and this story, we have not reread the series again and again and again, but because we do readings and because people ask us about things and we sort of have conversations about it, it's like we revisit it nowhere near as in-depth as any of the fans who have reread the series. And you all know so much more about it than we do, like really.
Yes.
But as you get older, you identify with different issues. So something that didn't strike me as a big deal at 35, when I was 55 and I thought about that scene again, it's like, oh my God, that's my life. Like,
Yes.
oh.
Yes.
I think that's another kind of, what is it? It's very reassuring to know, well, it's kind of depressing to know that whatever age you are, you're going to have problems, right? But it's very reassuring to know at the same time that whatever age you are, there are going to be solutions to those problems. And he gives you examples of the people who have surmounted those problems at any given age, which is what's so great about the fact that there is such a wide range of ages among the characters.
Absolutely.
I think you can find yourself anywhere in this, but multiple different ways, What was your experience when you read it for the first time? Who did you really, really relate with?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah.
I did. Nynaeve was my heart and soul the first time that I read it. I'm on my first reread, so my second read currently, and I'm feeling a little more of a pull towards Egwene this time.
Heck yeah. That's my girl.
So it's
Traitor.
Eventually you'll get to Moiraine.
I think I'm almost there.
Baron.
Yeah.
So I have another kind of a fun question. If you had to choose a therapist from the books, this is going to be your therapist that's going to help you with your mental health journey, who would you choose?
On Sanche.
Oh, good choice.
Such a good answer.
Nice.
Yes. So fast.
She's
too.
so wise. It's such a good point.
I was thinking Loyal or maybe Varen. I never even went to one. What a great answer.
Elias.
Yeah.
Oh, what a wonderful character.
Pretty good.
I guess I kind of like to piggyback off of that because this is somewhat related, but a lot of these characters go through different problems throughout the books, right? Do you relate to any specific character based on, the struggles or the mental health issues that they had to face during the books? Oh? Who might that be, if you don't mind? Obviously, we don't have to talk about it if you don't want to.
Well, I have huge issues with authority.
Okay.
There are so
I
many
get that.
in this story. And so I think for me, it's like the whole, the studying and the testing to become an Aes Sedai, and it's just a horrible process. And there's people you can't talk back, and you just have to do what they say. And it's like your biggest battle is with yourself. And until you understand that, nothing falls into place. That, I think, is one of my big struggles, that I am my own worst enemy. I mess it up for myself because I just So it was really amazing to watch these examples, not just of the people who were undergoing the testing and working toward that goal and being so frustrated, but also from the point of view of the people administering the testing.
Such a
What's going on
responsibility.
in their head.
Mhm.
And that made me kind of relate to some of my teachers in the past. You know, and I felt kind of sorry
For all that
I put that
pushback.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I really related to the kids. The Egwene, Perrin, Matt, Rand. I thought they were like my people. And upon rereads, as I've become an adult, it's like, oh my gosh, how did Moraine deal with these people? Like she was so patient. It was unbelievable. So I totally feel you like that. It's funny how your perspective changes and you relate to different characters in different ways. Michael, did you have anyone that you related to specifically based on their experience?
I don't know that I had a role. I had the issue I think that to me was that I loved the exploration of was leadership. And how the different ways that people kind of assumed it, seized it, lost it, nurtured it. In the male characters, you have, it's like, and he's the dragon. Why isn't everybody paying it? Why isn't everybody following me? How do I earn the leadership? And then you have people like, Perrin, who's like the last thing he wants to do, be a leader. And again, how do you lead when you don't feel you have the skills, the talent, the basics of what leadership is about? And yet people continue to follow you. What is that? And what is the thing that you are actually doing that you're not aware of in yourself? And that goes through then a whole range of, and that's not just in a leadership situation, it's in a life situation. It's like we're parents. One of the challenges is you instantly feel, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't know how to parent. And you fall back on templates that you experience yourself to a certain degree of success, with success or trepidation, because and then you see, oh my God, I sound like my dad, or I sound like and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not. But those explorations in terms of leadership were, to me, very fascinating, because you had all types, whether it's Lan, totally reluctant, Perrin, totally reluctant, Rand, forced to, and then trying to seize it, and then realizing that's not how to lead. Then all these examples, whether it's Gaul or Elias, or who are is Tom a leader? To what degree is he not? All those questions. So for me, that was the fascination, I think, that I loved reading about as the story unfolded.
And I think also, like, for both of us, there were moments, and sometimes you knew it was coming and you had to prepare yourself for it, and sometimes it completely took you by surprise. But there were moments, I think I can speak for you as well, correct me if I'm wrong, where you're reading, and all of a sudden you are just split open.
Yes.
Because the situation that is being described so closely mirrors something that is so painful, so tender. As a narrator, you can't cry.
Oh.
So some of my favorite moments actually were kind of horrible to live through. It was very validating in terms of the worth of the material, to feel like, oh, you just found that thing I did when I was 9 that I'm still ashamed of, and you put it on the page, and now I'm reading it, and I'd like to cry. I can't cry because I got to finish the scene, but it's in your voice. But I know that you also have experienced those moments.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, and that's part of again, part of that to me is just the discovery that when you say the words out loud, it changes than just seeing them on the page. And part of it too is when you're saying the words out loud, you're
Releasing.
well, yeah, or you're living it to a certain degree. That character or that pain or that sometimes it's ecstasy, but most of the time it's the hard things that you're like tucking away and burying and then have to bring out.
That coming through on your reading, I think, is a part of why you are Wheel of Time celebrities.
Yeah, completely agree.
Like, we feel it. You bring it to life for us, listening to you read it.
I'm curious. I mean, when you study acting Shakespeare, you start to understand that the way the words are laid out on the page, the consonants give you the action and the vowels give you the emotion.
Okay.
And it's a really amazing feeling when you make that connection and you understand why he put the word "oh" at the beginning of that line.
Right.
Because the emotion that's released on the vowel "oh" fuels the next line. I wonder if Wheel of Time fans, as a sort of therapeutic exercise, ever try reading aloud themselves to experience the release, as opposed to just consuming, taking in and absorbing. If they would read it aloud, I wonder if they would experience some of those moments of release.
I know.
I'm going to take that challenge up.
You should.
I'm going to try it because I'm reading right now. Why should I? Definitely try it.
I've done it every now and then, like on my TikTok. I'll read the opening the Wheel of Time turns and ages come and pass. Like, I'll just read it, and it is literally like, while I'm saying it out loud, it's just, there's like this well of emotion depending on what I'm reading, and it's so different than just like looking at it, right? Because I'll pull it up and look at it before I start doing the narration, and then when I start saying it, it's like a whole different vibe shift, and it's incredible. So yeah, people in the chat, if you haven't done that yet, you should definitely try it, because it's something else for sure. Okay, so Tavern, I know you had some questions prepared too. I don't know if you've gotten to many of them, so you wanna give it a shot?
They've actually answered a couple of them. We talked about Rand, and the multiple issues that he went through between him and Lews Therin.
True.
They actually already answered the whole. When someone relates to the characters in the books, do you think they include the traumatic experiences that the characters are also experiencing, which you just touched on?
Yeah.
So I have an exercise. Will involve the chat. Okay, as well as you. So I'm going to name some mental health issues, and what we're going to do is we're going to identify which characters fall into that.
So we're armchair therapists. Is that what that's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
We are not degreed.
We are not doctors. Where's the camera? We're not
certified.
doctors. Don't listen to us.
Before it starts, quick, $10 super chat from Beth Weston. She says, late to the show. I'll have to catch the entire thing tomorrow. Just wanted to send a big hello to Michael and Kate. It was so great to meet you in Columbus in July. Thank you, Beth. You're incredible. Okay. Tavern, proceed.
All right. Chat, if you're pay attention, we're going to do this, and just type in, and this could have more than one character, by the way. Any of these can have more than one character. So anxiety and panic attacks.
Well, that feels like Rand, as part of his PTSD.
I think Perrin as well.
You think? What makes you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because
like with his wolf brother
coming to terms with the whole wolf thing and the hammer and the axe.
True. Okay.
Anybody else for anxiety and panic attack?
I think it depends on the situation. I think Aaron, when he's meeting a woman, especially if Fail's He's constantly having a panic attack.
That is true.
By you. Um,
Great
uh,
example.
and the same with Matt. I mean, you try to nail Matt down to a commitment.
Oh man.
When he's with Tuan, oh my, he's a mess.
The fact that he doesn't know that he's saying things that are making him get married. Every time he says something that leads more to the commitment of marriage, and he's freaking out because he doesn't want to say anything. It's pretty amazing. All right, so from the chat, we've got Luke Ayasadai says Rand. Lesby Nerdy says Rand, Egwene, and Nynaeve. Ayasadai also says Egwene. Sith Guy went to Berlin, and Wolf Brother went to Abby. Beth Weston went to the person who we do not name on the show.
Gawain.
Don't mention his name. All right, so the next one is, this one's tough. I really couldn't think of any. There's one big character that I think, but I don't think that's what his issue was. Bipolar disorder.
Well, I think there's something to be said about, well, I guess this is more multiple personalities, but you've got Rand and Luce Theron, which is like a problem, obviously. Bipolar disorder, though, like we're talking like, manic depressive. I'm not sure about that.
About our favorite bard.
I have friends who are dealing with that issue in their life, and I don't know that I know enough about it other than what I would call a caricature of what bipolar is. So I'm going to withhold that.
That's totally fair.
Somebody said Slayer. I think Beth Weston said Slayer. Is pretty good. I think Ishmael, when he's kind of going back and forth between him and Alzamon and whatnot, I think that's more. I don't know if that's split personality or just him.
I think a lot of these are multiple personality disorder, actually, because they go back and forth and they struggle with multiple sort of personalities, which is exactly.
Okay. I'm blanking on the name. He's from the north. It's not sounds like, but he becomes a religious fanatic.
Massima.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, Massima, yes.
My favorite Mr.
Answer.
Clean. Yeah, that's a really good answer.
He's intense.
That to me would be the
actually, that really is a good example, because there are times when he's just manically crazy, and there are times where he's very sane. And it's almost like two different people in the same body. So yeah, I think that's a really good example. All right.
There's one of the White Cloak leaders who's also in that. Part of it has to do with just the level of fanatic obsession.
Yeah.
And I may be simplifying my understanding.
No, I think we were talking about.
That means.
You're talking about Chad Bayer.
I think
his
that's
obsession for Perrin.
I don't know. The thing is like, we're not therapists, we're not psychiatrists, so it's kind of just a matter of like observing what we see, and then hopefully there are certain characters who overcome mental health issues that people can actually learn from. That is hopefully the idea, rather than just diagnosing them.
I got two quick ones, and then we'll move on. PTSD. That could be a myriad of characters, but PTSD. I actually think Lan for sure. Rand.
I'll say Egwene.
Pretty much everybody. Egwene, definitely.
Egwene, 100%.
Yeah.
I guess Tavern, you've talked about like the sometimes struggling with PTSD. Did you like relate specifically to one or all of those characters because of the experiences that they faced, or did you learn anything from them, anything like that?
I did. I actually started reading The Wheel of Time while I was deployed for the first time. I think it was in 2000. I wasn't deployed for the first time. It was the first time I read the books. It was like in 2003, 2004, and I did. I learned a lot from a lot of the characters. For example, I've told you a million times, Lan is my favorite character. because of his sense of honor, his duty, all things that soldiers, deep down inside really want to live up to, and he embodied that and so much more. But some of my training, in which I was shoved into boxes that you couldn't stand up or sit down in, were very Egwene or Rand. POW or interrogation training, stuff like that. Definitely Egwene. Trying to figure out how to, okay, if you're in this battle or if you're in this situation and your brain is going through a myriad of different ways to either get out of this or survive this, is very Matt. But yeah, a lot of this stuff definitely resonates with me. I mean, I did 29 years.
Sure.
So yeah, it totally resonates with me.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm going to do, we kind of went off topic on the PTSD, but that's fine. I'm just going to ask one last question. That is, you feel that readers or listeners to the audiobooks manifest short or long-term mental health issues that the characters are experiencing in the books while they're reading the books? Do you think that people connect closely with the characters, that they start feeling some of the anxiety or some of the PTSD or whatnot?
I think if you mean empathize,
Yeah, empathize. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
that makes sense. That makes sense to me, because I think, with a good story, you identify with and connect to the characters, and then when they are going through something, you kind of share their feelings. So back to the authority issue, whenever an Aes Sedai is cut off from her power,
Oh yeah.
I'm just like,
Yes. Yes.
that's the worst, right? Being helpless.
All right, I guess this is kind of related to that, just to bounce off of it. But do you think this focus kind of on mental health issues and all the mental health struggles that the characters face, do you think it manifests in the Wheel of Time fandom? I know you met a lot of us at WotCon. It seems to me personally that we have a lot of empathy. There's just a lot of, I don't know, awareness of our own mental health going on with the people that I've met in the fandom. Have you seen that at all?
I think what was so impressive about meeting everybody in person in Columbus at WotCon was just the amazing sort of complexity of the individuals who came. So there was a tremendous variety, different kinds of people, different ages, different types, different personalities, a huge range. And then the really amazing thing was in experiencing what a cohesive community this was. So it was kind of stunning. I said to someone, it's like, oh, you write down all the principles that if we could just live by these principles, the world would be pretty freaking perfect. And oh, look, it's actually happening. This is what people are doing all around me right here and now. They're living these principles, and it doesn't feel imposed from above. It feels like very authentic, coming from inside. So I don't know about manifesting that. Maybe that's a word that I would change, because I don't think they're adopting any of the mental health issues from the book. I feel like among a huge variety of people, such as exists at that place and time, they're also really smart, and they're going to give this series a very close read. And so I think they pick up on a lot of that stuff, and I think they can identify it. And for a lot of them, I think that was one of the other impressive things. They could name themselves. They could describe themselves. There was no kind of stigma attached to just, they like the whole openness and acknowledgement of, yeah, so I'm an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to come talk to me, I'm going to be over there because I like this crowd, too big. I'm feeling anxious. I'm going to step away, but I'd love to talk. Like, just to be able to articulate that is huge.
Mm-hmm.
It means you don't have to change. You just have to explain.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think we come from a theater background, and one of the things we always had to remember was somebody's going to see you on stage playing a character, and they're going to say, "That's me," and that seeing yourself in the story is very empowering. You can identify, even though sometimes this is who I want to be, but that's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you're seen is hugely empowering to yourself in terms of that there's worth there, because that's the one thing I think that the characters, the journey that these characters go on, is all about, well, some of it's coming of age, but most of it's a redemption journey, in whatever form that may have to take, and that to me I think is what draws people in, because that's a powerful message. Healing and redemption is huge.
Yes.
So yeah, and I think the other thing is realizing, yeah, and the great thing about the internet and the social networking, we can find our communities more easily. We're not trapped because we're living, in a town of 500 people, 600 miles away from something. It's like, no, it's like you can find your tribe. You can find people who you identify with, sometimes in a negative way.
Yeah.
But
we have some of those.
and that to me was what the Wakan was all about. It's like, yeah, these are people who have found their tribe and
Absolutely.
embracing a redemption story, and exploring it, and knowing that they're in some phase of that journey themselves. Because none of us has reached that place.
Right.
So
That's awesome. Okay.
I was just
No, you. Go ahead.
Please.
curious, Tavern, through your experience serving as a soldier, I keep wondering if Robert Jordan, what his journey was like his life journey in terms of serving in the military and experiencing all those things, and then finding, like, he absorbed so much information about so many different things from all these different books he read, and then he kind of distilled all of that into this amazing story that draws from so many different threads. And I wonder if that was his own,
response.
yeah, I wonder if that was like the way he chose to process his life was by creating this story.
It's possible. I mean, and I want to believe so. One of the things that's helped me, and don't get me wrong, it took me years. Like, I actually didn't start getting help for any of this until about 2-3 years ago. So I was kind of living with over 20 years just on my own. But one of the things that helped was writing. Writing down experiences, writing down thoughts. It didn't matter if it was some bullshit thing. When I decided to go back to school, I went to school for game design, and I went to school for creative writing. So I've got my bachelor's in game design, my master's in creative writing, and it helped because I could write these stories that don't really mean anything to anybody else, but for me, they were great. And it does help. And finally, when I started talking to other people, if you're thinking back, if he was, a Vietnam era veteran, they didn't really have a whole lot of that. They didn't have that support in place. I can totally see him taking his experiences, his travels, and all of that, and putting them into one story, and bringing that stuff in from his personal life completely. Yeah.
I'm interested. How does the character of Grady resonate with you?
I love Grady. Like no joke. Like I said before, my favorite character, of course, is Lan. I resonate most with Lan. Moraine is second. But when it came to the Ashaman and the Black Tower, Grady was the character that I was like, here's a guy that's coming out of retirement to do what he needs to do. Right? And to this day, if they called me up and say, "Hey, we got to do something," throw stuff on. I mean, I'm beat to hell. I'm broke. I've got I've got pain in half my over half my body, but I'll do it. A heartbeat. So yeah, Grady was an amazing character. My particular favorite part is when he raised the flag at Dumais Wells. Grady raised the flag, and I mean,
The interesting thing about that character too is discovering a talent late in life. And that to me is also that whole what's the circle of women?
The kin.
Kin.
Kin. Here you have who have an idea of something, but without the leadership and without necessarily the education, so to speak. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a folklore, there's a wealth of information that's very powerful outside of the mainstream, not necessarily validated by the mainstream, but it's to me that again it's a very interesting situation, and in that same way it's like and later in life discovering, oh, I can do this. I have talent that I never thought I had.
It's interesting. I was at a job a few years ago, and we did instructional design. So we did like online courses for different universities and whatnot. I got to do some voiceover work for one of the courses, and that was amazing. I love that stuff. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the Wheel of Time fandom specifically is, thanks to the books, there's an emotional maturity there. We experience through the book, so it's not like we're learning at a school. We're just kind of learning by experience, the problems, like the moral issues, extreme issues with things like slavery or, not working together as the sexes, right? Men and women are better together. There's all kinds of moral messaging, I think, in the books, including about mental health, right? It's you shouldn't face mental health issues alone. That's one thing. Like with Nynaeve, for example, it's, she has this need for people to take her seriously, right? Because it's like, it's not exactly imposter syndrome, but I feel like a lot of people, women especially, can relate to not being taken as seriously as you might deserve. And so seeing that again in these books or listening to it or whatever, I think it really, having so many different types of lessons sprinkled throughout these books, makes for a really emotionally mature fandom. So I'm kind of proud of us, you guys.
I love us.
I love us too, for sure. Okay, so we ran a little bit over 8, and we told you guys we wouldn't hold you much longer. So let's just do one last. Winespring, you haven't said anything in a while. Do you want to maybe ask them something or say anything or whatever, and then we'll do a round of goodbyes?
Okay, let's see. I was not prepared.
Oh, that's
with
okay.
Another question.
You don't have to. We don't have to. We can just say whatever.
I just want to say that I've just been fangirling out the entire time you've been here. Just sitting here listening to you and speaking about Wheel of Time together has been really fascinating. And just thank you for coming on.
You're very welcome.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
I wanted to say we called out a scene that Michael did, and Lesbian Nerdy commented in the chat a scene that Kate did that she wanted to call out, and it's between you did a scene between Egyanin and Bail Doman, and she said basically using two different like really bizarre accents in one scene, and you just absolutely nailed it. So I just want you to say that again. We love you, and you guys both are incredible, and I'm so happy to have you on. And honestly, you only having read the books, you know, the one, like you haven't done the rereads like a lot of us have. Your knowledge and just like intimate familiarity with the themes and everything is just incredibly impressive. So well done there. Okay, Tavern, you go ahead. Oh, no, Kate, please.
I was just going to say, in terms of digging into the analysis, this book, Origins of the Wheel of Time, is amazing.
Ooh.
The details are so, I mean, he researched he had access to all the notes.
Wow.
You know, and so it's
ready for that. I'm ready for that.
That's awesome.
Okay, so my last thing, a little back patting for myself. No, it is I for the chat, I finished New Spring.
Woo!
Ha! I had never
Good
read
job.
New Spring. Never read New Spring, so I just finished it. So from that turns into why Moraine has become my second favorite character.
Okay.
Going into mental health, anxiety that woman must have had to go through, knowing for 20 years that she was racing against time versus the Black Aja, and every corner she turned, every time she went to somebody, I mean, it shifts your perception of the show, for example, right? Where they take her to go see Karini to get healed. Lan takes her there to the Greens and the Reds on the show. The fact that he had to, as well as he had to trust nobody in that camp was black, or at least hope that nobody was black.
Mm-hmm.
Every decision they had to make on their journey for 20 years looking for Rand was fraught with, can I trust this person or not?
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. So
Can't imagine.
There you go.
Okay, so Michael and Kate, again, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you both, either of you, want to say, like, as your last thing you're going to say to the Wheel of Time fandom before your next appearance on a podcast or whatever?
Thank you for listening.
Yes. Thank you for listening. Enjoy.
Well,
we do.
Yeah, we had a great time. This was awesome. Okay, well, we are going to sign off. I know Rings of Power just premiered, so some people are probably antsy to go watch that because Lord of the Rings and The Wheel of Time have a bit of a fandom crossover, if you're familiar. So once again, thank you to everyone in the chat. You were amazing. Michael and Kate, I cannot believe you came on the show, and we really appreciate you. Tavern, Winespring, y'all are the best. And that is going to be it. So thank you so much. Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody.